Hey guys, and welcome back to Knucklehead TV. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Snyder Cut, or Zack Snyder's Justice League, which released after one of the greatest fan movements in pop culture history. Now, many of you who may follow me on Twitter probably know that I am not the biggest fan of Zack Snyder's movies, whether that's his DC movies or just his movies in general. But before I get into my actual review of this particular movie, I'd like to preface it with a couple of different things. The first thing being that I have an enormous amount of respect for Zack Snyder, despite the fact that I don't think he's the greatest filmmaker in the world. He is an incredibly nice guy. Every single time I hear him talk, he seems extremely humble. He seems extremely passionate about whatever it is that he's doing. Every single time I hear him talk about what he's creating, he does have a deep knowledge of whatever that is. And of course, he's been through a lot. He went through the tragic loss of his daughter, and no parent should ever have to lose a child. So that's just a horrific thing that he had to go through. So for him to be able to come back and complete his vision for Justice League, which is the third movie that he's done in the DCEU, so sort of his trilogy, I guess you could say. He's finishing out his trilogy, and to have it be received so well by so many fans, and to have so many fans that were so passionate about it and pushed so hard to get this to happen, I could not be happier for Zack Snyder. I mean, I'm just so happy for that guy with all he's been through and how good of a person he is. And also, too, looking at all of the crap that Whedon did with his movie and how much Whedon disrespected some of the actors. You know, this is just a great thing that came full circle, regardless of whether I think this is the greatest movie of all time or the worst movie of all time. And another reason that I'm extremely grateful for the existence of this movie is what it means for fans going forwards. There were a lot of journalists and a lot of people out there saying when it was first announced that the Snyder Cut was happening, that it sets a dangerous precedence for fans and their demands and their deciding what they get to see. But from my perspective, fans are the ones who pay to see these things. We're the ones putting money in all of the pockets of these big corporations. So why shouldn't we get to decide what we actually want to see? So I just think that's a ridiculous notion. And so I think that the Snyder Cut actually happening because of how hard fans push to see it is a great thing for all fans going forwards, whether that's Star Wars, Marvel, DC, whatever. And hopefully more fans have more say in what they actually want and get to see. Now, with all of that stuff aside, what this movie means for fans, what it means for Zack, all that stuff aside, let's actually talk about the actual movie now. It got pretty good reviews from critics even, which typically they go really hard on Zack's movies, and it was extremely well received by the fans. But is it as good as a lot of people are saying it is? Not at all, if I'm being completely honest with you. I mean, yes, it is much better than Joss Whedon's version of that movie. Joss's version was very disrespectful to Zack's vision. It was disrespectful to some of the actors and actresses that worked on it. But just because Zack was more honest and genuine and passionate about what he was doing, it doesn't make his movie good. It can be better than the original product, but it's not just inherently good all of a sudden. To me, it was no better or no worse than Man of Steel or Batman vs. Superman, which were also made by Zack Snyder in the DCEU. He didn't really miss a step there. So I would expect Snyder fans to enjoy the Zack Snyder Cut of Justice League, but I'm seeing a lot of people who aren't particularly huge fans of his or the DCEU coming out and saying, wow, that was great. And it just kind of shocks me because I don't see what is great about this movie that wasn't in Batman vs. Superman or Man of Steel, or even in Joss's version. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of greatness in these movies to begin with, but for people like me who didn't really like any of the previous movies, I don't get what they are now seeing in this. Now, before I get into the countless things that I did not like about this movie, or even about all of Snyder's DCEU movies, let me talk about the things that I did like about this movie and Snyder's others. Now, I'm no expert on the character of Superman. I mean, I would say I know a little bit more about him than a casual fan would, but I haven't seen all of the Superman movies, I haven't read a ton of Superman comics, so my perspective on the character and how Zack Snyder portrayed him throughout his movies isn't as well founded, for example, as my take on how Rian Johnson portrayed Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, which I found to be absolutely awful. But I know there's a lot of people who are big Superman fans who feel similarly about how Zack Snyder portrayed Superman. They say he betrayed his character and he wasn't true to him as how Superman is in the comics and in the cartoons. But frankly, for me, as somebody who, as I said, I'm not super knowledgeable about the character, and looking at superheroes, you're going to get a million iterations of these characters over and over and over again. I frankly don't care if he was true to that character or not. I'm just going to enjoy what I enjoy. And for the most part, throughout these three movies, even though I'm heavily critical of them, I enjoy most of what Zack does with the character of Superman. I think Henry Cavill is a literal god amongst men. I don't care how good Snyder's films are or aren't, or how good the old Superman films or cartoons or comics might be. Henry Cavill is my Superman through and through. He is literally the perfect casting for that role. I also think how Zack portrays Superman as this godlike figure that everyone on Earth looks up to. You know, he's this being from the stars, and he has these incredible abilities that are even way more intense than any other normal superhero that we might have seen before. I find that really, really interesting, but also the fact that Zack Snyder humanizes him. He shows him as this kid that grew up in a small town in Kansas, and we get to see all those scenes of him walking through cornfields and things like that. And I think that's the perfect way to go about portraying Superman, showing both sides of his character. So I think Zack did that really well in all of his films, but also in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Another thing that I think Zack did really well in his Justice League movie that just came out was the character of Cyborg. Of course, there was that whole controversy of Joss Whedon cutting out a lot of Ray Fisher's scenes. That's the actor who plays Cyborg, and apparently he was very disrespectful and rude and abusive to Ray the actor, and there was this whole movement of I stand with Ray Fisher. So there was this huge controversy, but Ray stood up for Zack Snyder and said that Zack had a vision for Cyborg. He was going to be a lot more important of a character in Zack's version of the film, and after seeing it, he absolutely was. He played such a bigger role in this movie. Now, I don't think Ray's the best actor in the world. In fact, I think a lot of the performances in this movie are pretty mediocre. But as far as the character goes, Zack made sure to honor the character and Ray and respect him, and I give him major props for that. But that's pretty much where all of my enjoyment of this movie ends and where my criticisms begin. Outside of Ezra Miller's Flash, who is obviously very eccentric, but I don't particularly love, almost all of the heroes are extremely boring and extremely bland and have no personality whatsoever. I know a lot of Snyder fans will usually resort to the argument of they don't need to be fast and quippy and funny like all of the MCU heroes. That annoys me too, that a ton of the MCU heroes do that. So I don't need the DC heroes to be that way as well. And honestly, I think I like DC more than Marvel, just generally speaking. I mean, it's pretty close. I love a lot of it and I hate a lot of it from both sides, but I think I would say I like DC more. So that's not a good argument to counter that. These heroes, the portrayals of these characters, are just boring. And I love some of the castings. I mean, like I said, I absolutely love Henry Cavill as Superman. Jason Momoa, I think he's a perfect pick for Aquaman, a lot better than some pale blonde guy, and this is coming from a pale blonde guy. But they're just not interesting. All they do is brood and try to act tough. Some of the dialogue is awful. Jason Momoa's especially. Like I said, Ray Fisher did not have the best performance in this movie. He is very wooden, and I was uninterested in him other than the writing of the character. Like I said, Zack Snyder put a lot more emphasis on Cyborg than Joss Whedon did, so I give him props for that, but Ray did not do anything to really rope me in to this character. Gal Gadot is one of the most beautiful women on this entire planet, and I still think she's the perfect casting for Wonder Woman, but she is not a good actress. Patty Jenkins actually did manage to get a good performance out of her in the first Wonder Woman movie, and she actually had interesting personality in that first Wonder Woman movie, but in all of the other movies that Wonder Woman has been in, Gal Gadot has given pretty bad performances, and I don't know if that's because she's just not a good actress or if Zack Snyder's not the best at directing her or what, but the writing for her character in the first Wonder Woman movie, I mean, she had great chemistry with Chris Pine in that movie, and the way they portrayed her as this girl who was really trapped in her own world. She was so focused on being an Amazon warrior, and when she finally left her island and went out into the real world, she stuck out like a sore thumb and seemed so inexperienced, but then eventually decided to step up and fight to protect this earth, and it was very endearing and very powerful, and there's just nothing like that in the rest of the movies that she's in the DCEU. And then on to Batman. Good freaking God, he's embarrassing in these movies. I really don't understand how anyone can see him as badass or think he's cool or intelligent or anything. Ben Affleck is one of the better actors cast in these movies, but him as Batman just does not work at all for me. Like, he seems so tired and like he's half drunk all the time, like grabbing his back and like, Jesus Christ, I have to do this again. Like, what? It just does not work. And then how he's written too is just bad. I remember the scene where Superman is revived and he floats up into the air, and then all of the other members of the Justice League are there prepared to stop him or to greet him or whatever they feel like they have to do, and Batman's not. And then I'm thinking to myself, oh, he's not there because he's not as fast as the rest of them or as strong as the rest of them. And he shows up, of course, later in the fight, and that's after Superman wiped everybody out. And Batman has this look on his face of like, oh crap, I'm screwed. And he just seems so useless. And there's this line in the movie where Ezra Miller's Flash asks him, he goes, so what's your power again? And Batman says, I'm rich. And that literally is his power in these movies. He doesn't do anything else really. I mean, I've heard Matt Reeves explain, because his Batman movie is coming up and I'm really excited for that. He said if Batman has a power, it's his ability to endure. And of course, Batman has been described as the world's greatest detective many, many times throughout the years, but you don't see a hint of either of those things throughout these movies. Really, all Batman does is have these super huge ships and vehicles and ways to transport the Justice League team or have these cool tools. He is not a well-written character at all, and he's not well acted at all. I really don't get what people see in Ben Affleck's performance or the way this character is written, and this is coming from somebody whose favorite character of all time, well, not favorite character of all time, whose favorite superhero of all time is Batman, and it's not even close. Like, he is in a tier above every other superhero, and all of his villains are better than all of the villains in the rest of Marvel and DC. And frankly, I don't even care about the killing thing. I know that's a huge debate that everyone has, like, oh, he shouldn't kill, or he should kill, or he has killed. I frankly don't care about that. He is just not a well-written or acted character in Zack Snyder's movies, and I frankly find him embarrassing. And now on to Steppenwolf, who is the most bland villain of all time. Like, you really could have put any character into that slot and it wouldn't have changed a thing with how he was written. I mean, all he talks about, like, oh, I need to be redeemed in the eyes of Darkseid or whatever, and Wonder Woman has all these speeches about him and Darkseid where it's like, and they will unleash a great darkness upon this world, but there is no depth to him whatsoever. You compare him to Thanos in Infinity War, and he looks like an absolute joke. Thanos is written so much better. In Darkseid, I thought he was going to have a bigger role in the Snyder Cut, but really he was just there as a looming threat, and it seems like he would be in movies in the future if they continue to make more of Zack Snyder's Justice League movies. I really don't know what the state of that is right now. I've heard conflicting statements that he doesn't want to do anymore and he's done, but also that he would be open to returning. So I don't really know what's going on with that. But that's another common theme with this movie, is it seems like it sets up a lot of things. So I understand why some Snyder fans would be excited for that, but me as somebody who isn't even really a fan of any of these movies or characters or ideas, and the fact that I don't think Zack is gonna come back and set up this super elaborate DCEU like how the MCU is set up. I mean, he could, but I don't know. But it just seems like there's a lot of things that were set up in this movie that we will never get payoffs or conclusions for, such as Martian Manhunter showing up, or the interaction that Joker and Batman have in A Nightmare of Batman's. There's just a lot of things like that, and I don't think we'll ever see anymore. I would be glad to be proven wrong, and that would make a lot of fans really happy. So I'm down for that, despite the fact that I haven't liked any of Zack Snyder's DCEU movies, but I guess time will tell. But back to Steppenwolf, on top of him being a very poorly written character, he also looks so stupid. I remember when his design first dropped, a bunch of fans were getting super hyped over it, and I just don't get it. I mean, it didn't really hit me how stupid he looked until I actually watched this thing, because I wasn't super invested in all of the trailers and images and things that were coming out for the Snyder Cut. But, I mean, he looks like a giant monster with a hammerhead shark head, and his entire suit is just silver spikes. Like, it just looks so dumb. I don't know how anyone sees that as cool or badass, because it's really not. And speaking of visuals, I know that visuals are something that Zack Snyder is often praised for. I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't even really like his visuals. I liked some of them in past movies like Watchmen or 300, but I don't love them. Like, they're unique, that's for sure, but it's not entirely my style. But for this movie and other movies, like, they look kind of gross to me. I'm not gonna lie, it looks like really overused CGI, which CGI in general I don't have a problem with. I mean, I'm a fan of the Star Wars prequels, but it looks like this movie came out at the same time as the Star Wars prequels, and the prequels get a pass because they were innovating technology at that time. This movie coming out in 2021 shouldn't look like it came out between 1999 and 2005. Like, that's a bit embarrassing. But I know a lot of people love the visuals that Zack gives everyone in these movies, so I guess I'm in the minority there. And I'm in the minority on disliking this film, which really shocks me. As I said, there's a lot of people who I know don't really like Zack Snyder's films who are now praising this one. And as I said, I don't see anything overly special about this one that wasn't in his previous two DCEU movies. So I feel like I'm going crazy a little bit, but you know what? More power to those who enjoy these movies. I'm happy for anyone who enjoys any movie, even if I dislike it. This movie was also too long. I mean, I sat through it and I actually didn't even take a break, and it seemed short for a 4-hour movie, but 4 hours is still too long. I get Zack Snyder wanted to complete his vision and do all of these things that we didn't see in the original Justice League movie, but it could have been 3 hours or 3.5 hours. It didn't need that entire 4-hour time span. There was a lot of setup in the first half of the movie and so many unnecessary scenes, and there was a lot of unnecessary slow-mo as well. Like, they really went hard on that, so it could have been shortened, things could have been taken out. The pacing was pretty weird in the beginning because we would get this random assortment of clips from different characters in different areas, some of which seemed very important, some of which could have been cut out, and they would be all like really short, and it was kind of hard to grasp the narrative. And then all of a sudden we'd get like a crazy long drawn out scene, and so yeah, I just wasn't a fan of particularly the first half of the Snyder Cut. After I watched the movie, I went on Twitter and I saw this tweet saying, "So you think these are boring?" and then listed a bunch of important events from the film and then asked, "If you think these are boring, then you have to tell me what you think is exciting," because they loved the film, the person who posted it, and thought these moments were great. And on surface level, yes, those moments are cool moments in concept, but it's all about how it's done. It's about how it's written, it's about how it's executed, it's about how it's set up. And for me, just with the visuals that I didn't really enjoy, the characters that didn't really have any personality, the weird pacing of how things could be super drawn out or how things could be super choppy, and there's really no payoff because I wasn't invested in these characters. I mean, Avengers Endgame, it is not a very good movie if you look at it objectively. I mean, at least if you try to look at it objectively, it's not a very good movie, but it is so emotional because of how well a lot of the MCU was done before that. You're really invested in these characters, and so these big moments that this person listed, like, I really couldn't care less about, even if they are cool in concept. So I just wanted to address that. But I guess on top of that, that's the majority of my criticisms of the Snyder Cut. I still respect the hell out of Zack Snyder. He's been through a lot, and I think he's a really nice guy. And I'm so glad that this film happened for him and for the fans. And, it'd be cool to see him continue with his Snyderverse. I know a lot of people are trying to get him to come back. I guess we'll have to see. But yeah, his films are just not for me, man. Not for me. So I have to give this one a 5.5 out of 10. I have to definitely do it on a 10-star rating because on Letterboxd I kept bouncing back and forth between a 2.5 and a 3. But I think a 5.5 out of 10 is about perfect for how I feel about this film. Not bad really, but not really good. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on Zack Snyder's Justice League, or the Snyder Cut. Even though I personally don't really like it, it was still a huge thing for this to come out, and it was a huge event, and I'm so grateful that it exists. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you stuck around to the end, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will be linking down below my brand new podcast, Knucklehead Radio, so be sure to go check that out as well for more content. Once again, guys, thank you so much, and I will catch you next time.